Hey everybody, welcome back to The Best Thing Ever, a podcast about the stuff your friends love. I am Alex, your host. Each week we pick a topic that one of our friends likes and it matters a lot to them, and then we have a deep dive into the history and philosophy of that topic. We talk about what it means to us emotionally, and then we rank it on the master list. We make it compete in a ruthless fight to the death against everything else we've ever talked about. It's where the theme kind of changes a little bit. Today's episode is about romance novels. For those of you watching at home on YouTube, you can see this lovely fake romance novel cover that an AI created for us of a man whose face has been just smudged out a little bit, looking hot on a horse.
He's got the good smudge face.
Yeah.
You don't want it.
I'd say better looking horse than man overall.
I mean,
good. I mean, I like that the hand is like, we can't do hands, but we can do a mane that kind of flows into the hand. It's good.
I think it's clear that we want Michelangelo's David from the body, but we want that sort of like retouched Jesus that was like, really smashed up in the face.
Who tried to fix it and made it look
That's
like
what
a
we're all
monkey.
looking for. That's what gets us going.
That's one of my favorite pieces of art. If you guys want to get more of these sweet visual aids, you can watch along on YouTube, youtube.com/AlexFalcone. But you rest assured, if you don't get the visual aids, this will still be a treat for your audio senses. Let me introduce you to the panel before I talk any more about them. My name is Alex. Like I said, I am a comedian, and I like to introduce you with the game I call Three Hosts and a Lie. Today it is three hosts, a guest, and a lie, and actually so far only two hosts, but a third host joining us soon. Oh, also, before I take my host and lie, I'm going to just remind you that I'm going to be in San Diego at Mic Drop Comedy on April 21st and 22nd. If you're in the area, I would love to see you. Also up in Seattle on April 28th and 29th. And my fun fact, yes?
I was going to say, it doesn't matter what year you're listening to this, that will always be true.
Yes, that is.
Every April,
Those
Alex
are
will be in
my
those
days.
places.
It's like President's
Got a
Day.
standing date.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my fun fact for today is that I am a best-selling author. Could be true, could be one of the lies. Well, could be the lie. We'll find out. Also joining us today, my co-host, our marketing daddy, Ezra Fox. Fun fact, a best-selling author.
Who knew?
Who knew? Or not. We'll find out. Also joining us today, Anthony Lopez is our angry socialist historian. He does not like olives.
They're on affront to God. I said it.
Wow.
I don't like it.
And joining us, hopefully in a few minutes, will be Hunter Donaldson, who's a board game influencer, and his fun fact, best-selling author.
I see a trend here.
You see the game? You see the game I'm playing? And just to catch you up on last week, Hunter has not eaten the poisonous pufferfish. That was a lie last week. Everything else we said was true. And then we have a very special guest. Let me bring in your very special guest. She's at Sarah Hatheway on Twitter. She is a writer and a longtime friend of the show, which, if you only started listening to this show, doesn't sound like that long, but goes way, way back. Please welcome Sarah Hatheway.
Hello.
Sarah, your photo has appeared in Maxim magazine, but you said in an entirely unsexy way. What does that mean?
So, like many people of my age who did comedy in Chicago in the 2010s, I worked for Groupon. And, Maxim came and did a huge story about Groupon and about how the staff was largely made up of comedians, and that was like kind of a secret sauce. So they had a photographer just set up in the cafeteria all day, and they're like, we have an idea for a photo spread. If you feel comfortable coming by and like making some weird faces, we're going to do a photo collage. And they ended up picking like 9 photos for the magazine, and I'm one of them. So
and what are you
it's, like,
doing?
I can show you if you're watching on YouTube. I
Yes.
have exactly the same hair I have now because I'm a creature of habit. I did a hair mustache.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
Very sexy. So it's like me and like, just like a t-shirt doing a hair mustache. And it's not like our names were in there or anything. It's just like part of the spread for the start of the article.
Groupon didn't have like a fancy suit dress code. I imagine everyone's showing up in tuxedos every day.
You had to pay $5 and you get $20 worth of suit, so it was a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanted to get rid of that hair mustache, they have a deal on waxing all the time.
Exactly. So many deals. But yeah, my very sweet mother was like, I'm so excited that there's this article about you and your company. And she went out and bought a Maxim magazine. So it's the only copy of Maxim that has ever been inside my household. And I was in it.
This goes back to something we talked about last week, which is if they ask you to hold a rubber chicken, don't hold a rubber chicken because that's the photo they're going to use. If you make a hair mustache, they're going to use that picture every time.
Oh, that's, you know what? It was me, though. They weren't directing us. I did like 10.
Yeah,
I did 10 different things.
And pretend it's a phone. That's the photo that they're going to use every time.
Yeah, I don't.
You can't direct a hair mustache. That's just natural born talent right there. You know?
That's from God.
Cord mustache.
We're so glad
That's from God,
We're so glad to finally get you on the new show. We have so much exciting stuff to talk about. Let's jump into our topic for the day. So like I said, our topic today is romance novels. This was your near immediate suggestion when I told you we were talking about the best things ever. And before we go into the history of it, I would like an emotional anchor for us. I would like you, Sarah, to please tell me, what is your first positive memory of romance novels?
Oh, gosh. Well, so there's a couple answers to this. Romance novels, as I'm sure we're going to talk about, it's an enormous genre. There's so many different subgenres within it. I think the first romantic book I remember reading and loving truly was, as it is for many people, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
Which is, her work is obviously about so much, but it does put an emphasis on romance and on feelings. And I just was absolutely floored by that as a young adult, and how honest and interesting it was just to spend time inside characters' minds talking about their feelings. I'm a super emotional person, and I was even crazier, more emotional as a preteen. So that felt really cool and affirming to me to be you can talk seriously about your feelings and feel seen in a book that way.
Do you feel more seen by Pride or by Prejudice? I haven't read the book. Is that what it's about?
Yes. Yeah. That's their names. Yeah, I definitely related to Miss Prejudice.
It's a buddy cop comedy.
Yeah.
John Pride.
That'd be amazing.
That's such a good idea for a buddy cop.
Yeah. But yeah, it's an incredible book. If you're thinking about probably the way that a lot of people think of romance novels in terms of clinch covers, the people in a passionate embrace, maybe a Harlequin type of thing. That I first got into in college. In one of my summers between college, I was in a theater group that was traveling the Fringe Festival circuit. We drove hundreds of thousands of miles across the United States in a minivan, and we would stop when we got gas and pick up these novels at gas stations and take turns reading them aloud to each other in the car to pass the time. And it was
so this is a classic this is so silly, we don't really like any of this, and then you're secretly I might like some of this.
No, we all got so into it. There was one I should have looked up the author of this. I think it is a Harlequin one that is called Virgin Slave Barbarian King, that was a
nice.
kind of Norse, I think, sort of Viking thing.
Yep. Well, wait.
Checks out.
I assume that's the name.
Wait, there's a sequel to this also. There's Virgin Slave Barbarian King 1 and 2, it looks like. I'm not sure which is...
Well, I think I read the first one, but it was incredible. So that was it was
I assume
so
those are the
fun
names of the main 4 characters in the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a comment here somewhere.
Yeah. But that's I have read a lot since then. I wouldn't say that's my normal subgenre that I would be drawn to necessarily. That was just a fun way to pass the time on the road. But I again really loved it. Really got into it. Getting into people's feelings is so interesting in fiction.
Yeah, from pampered beauty to barbarian slave.
Sarah, I think that the move to feelings and that being able to resonate, that makes a ton of sense, dude.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's something that's I think a lot of people have a certain idea about what a romance novel is. And again, there's a billion different subgenres you can get into. There's different levels of spiciness you can get into. I truly think there is a romance novel, quote unquote, for anyone, depending on what you want. Mm-hmm. As long as you're interested in, again, engaging with feelings.
I'm very excited to talk about what level of spiciness and what level of other thing is the appropriate things for your recommendations. But I'd like to hear a little history now. So we're going to go with Anthony. Before I do that,
okay,
Hunter, welcome to the show.
My name's Hunter, and I'm here.
Great.
You may have heard me before on this show.
Yes. And we introduced you already, so we're just going to go. We're just about to start. Anthony, please give us the history of romance novels.
Oh, the history of romance.
Yeah, so this is a presentation I called Romance Novels or The Road to HEA, which is Happily Ever After.
Oh, yes.
Very important acronym if you want to understand romance novels. You got to understand HEA.
Of course.
But, so this is the presentation that I sort of knew the least about going into the topic I knew least about going into the presentation. And this is a lot of fun this week. It got me thinking a lot about genre. And I sort of think that's like sort of the prism I want to sort of do this presentation through is sort of my understanding of this genre and the importance of genre. So part one of my presentation is titled Stay With Me Here. I'm going somewhere with this, all right? I need you guys to trust me. But I want to talk about genre and specifically 3 points about genre. And to do that, I'm going to use an example of a genre that does mean a lot to me. So let's talk about Lovecraftian horror.
This is what you were expecting, right, Sarah?
I mean, love is in the title.
Oh, that's
so.
true.
Yes,
Okay, I'm back on
that's
board.
a good point. I didn't consider that.
You're right. You got me.
But I want to ask the question, what is Lovecraftian horror, right? What do you guys think of when you think of Lovecraftian horror, right? We're going to think of like supernatural horror, fear of the unknown, outer gods, old gods, this kind of concept. Yes, well... Yes,
You don't
exactly.
have to Google it. You can just read it. You can. You
Yes,
can get
exactly.
The
That's
vibe. Have you not
clear.
read
That's
it?
All
not-
I know is that there's like sea monsters.
You can feel it.
And you shouldn't read what he
Yes.
has to say about the world.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's going to come up here in a second.
Okay,
so,
great.
there are sort of 3 kind of points I want to make about understanding a genre and when you're a fan of a genre and kind of the benefits that kind of come from having a deeper understanding of it. So number one, something I'm always really fascinated about Lovecraftian horror is that Lovecraft didn't invent any of these concepts, right? These concepts are old. They've been used in a lot of stories. Edgar Allan Poe was doing this kind of stuff 100 years before. The King in Yellow was published in 1895, 20-something years before Lovecraft wrote his first short story. But if you go to a bookstore that has a Lovecraftian section, that is where you will find this work, right? And it's just very interesting for me, the idea of like works that are before Lovecraft was even writing that have then been moved into Lovecraftian genres. And the reason that is because genre has a gravitational effect. Right? Once you codify a genre and bring it in, you drag stuff in that inspired the genre, right? So that's kind of my first sort of concept I want us to sort of kick around in the head.
How do you determine like how much pull, like gravitational, like weight, like a genre has? Is there like a formula?
Yeah, it's it's math.
Yeah.
It's
it math?
exactly genre, which is math core.
Yeah.
Which is very popular among a certain
It depends on the density
Math
of the
horror,
author's
more
works,
like it.
Actually. You have to stack all of their writing together, and the density of that.
That's
is what
true.
pulls stuff
Lovecraft
in.
books are really long, I assume.
I mean, I do love this idea though that like say like if there's 2 warring genres, like one genre could win and subsume the other one. We're just like, oh no, it turns out it's a sub genre of mine.
My second concept I want us to think about is that genre is not limiting. It is actually really good for variety. And when you understand a genre, it helps you process the variety in a way that you can understand. So I have like 3 examples here of The Thing, Stranger Things, and Annihilation, right?
Oh, why didn't you get
3 solid?
I wish you kept
romance stories.
I tried to find a third thing. Okay, I
thank
did,
you.
Okay, I fucking tried, Ezra.
Okay. Then that's all I need.
The
That's
Thing,
all I need.
Yes,
Stranger
all right.
Things, and Dr. Seuss's Thing 1 and Thing 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all 3 of these are Lovecraftian stories, right?
There's something about
And-
Mary.
They're so wildly different in tone and approach. But if you understand the genre conventions, it's sort of like can be actually very satisfying in a way that if you're a fan of a genre, that you can understand things that before the characters do. So there's this idea of like in The Thing, you're a fan of Lovecraftian horror and you understand the tropes of the genre. The second they bring that dog into the compound, you know everyone in that compound is dead, right?
Yeah.
Like the characters don't know it yet, but you know it. And there's a sense of satisfaction that comes from that, right? Understanding the genre will help you understand a story better. And the third part that I kind of want to talk about is the problematic problem. So, yeah, Lovecraft sucked. All right? He was a real problematic guy. He was very, very scared of everything, mostly minorities and, like, going to the grocery store and things like that.
Actually, Swamp Thing is close. You're closer with Swamp Thing.
As well as Swamp Thing, actually.
I should have done Swamp Thing, actually.
Next time. Okay.
Next time, yeah. But the thing that kind of comes from being a fan of a genre that has such problematic roots is that being a fan of a genre is that the work of the kind of creator and the influence on you doesn't matter back and forth as much, right? Because you're a fan of the genre, and even if there's something problematic with it, you can still get something out of the work. So, Pro 2, I want to call this "Let's Fall in Love with Love." Aww. I want to start out with a great quote from Nancy Pearl, who is a famous librarian. Did you know those exist? I didn't.
Oh, I love this idea.
My mom was a librarian, and she's famous to me.
Hey!
Yeah, I've heard of her.
Yeah, does your mom have an action figure dressed as a superhero?
I don't know. She don't.
Yeah, just like that Space Octopi.
Yeah. But she has this great quote. This is something we sort of talked about in the video game
Also,
episode.
sorry, really quick. What is that photo? What is the photo of? It's her balancing the books on her head. She made the goofy photo. They were like, we got to use that for every spread.
That's the way.
If she'd made a hair mustache, that would be the photo we're using right now.
I mean, here's the thing. She's just plugging books. So I think we should all read, looks like Sea of Glory, The Lions of Al-Rasan, and The Grand Sophie, maybe?
Wow, good eyes.
I mean, look, librarians just want you to read. They don't care.
She has this quote about literary fiction is always judged by the best example, and romance is always judged by the worst. And this is the idea, something I've been considering a lot. We talked about this a lot with a video game episode a few weeks ago, but the idea of things that are meant kind of historically for boys and things that are historically meant for girls and the way society judges them, right? And I think that this is not just true with fiction. I mean, like, comic books are technically literary fiction, but they're a really good example of, like, you can't judge comic books by, like, the shit. You can only judge it by Sandman and Watchmen, the great things, right? But if we talk about, like, romance novels, people only throw the worst examples out there. No one ever talks about sort of like the better, more interesting examples.
Right. Yeah.
Love stories are old as hell.
We're getting spicy.
People have been telling love stories since the beginning of time. Historically, they mostly have been told from male POVs. A lot of times they're tragedies. You get very few happily ever afters. Classic love stories, right? As the romance genre gets established, it doesn't actually kind of get established as we know it till the 1970s, but there's a lot of works that laid the groundwork that sort of get caught up in the gravitational pool of romance novels that people sort of think are, but were different genres when they were written. So, like, the first one is sort of Samuel Richardson's Pamela, Virtue Rewarded, which came out in 1740. Its genre was conduct literature, which is the most 1700s fucking genre I have ever heard in my entire life.
That sounds hot.
Isn't it interesting that romance novels started out as dudes being like, ladies, here's how to behave?
Yeah, exactly. You look at Samuel Richardson. You're telling me this guy's gross? Tell me this guy's not a cool dude to hang out with?
Yeah, he doesn't look gross at all. He looks like he knows how women should be, is what he looks like.
I don't know how to fairly describe this person, but there's a cool judge wig. There's a judge wig going on. Yeah, that's all I could say. This is judgy. Just a judgy
he looks
vibe.
Judgy. He does. I do love a long title with a variety of sizes of fonts. So it's Pamela or Virtue Rewarded in a series of familiar letters from a beautiful damsel to her parents, now Frift published. First. Oh, that's an F. Thing.
Is this what like a book trailer was? It's just like, let's just say a couple things.
From the great minds that brought you conduct literature, 1738.
So, then we got to talk about the heavy hitters of the early genre, right? We've already had Jane Austen mentioned. Pride and Prejudice was released in 1813 under a different name, of course. But, that was kind of in, like, the Regency novel genre when it comes out. We have to mention the Bronte sister, Charlotte specifically. Let's give it up for her.
Yeah,
right?
top 5 Bronte, for sure, Charlotte.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Top 3, and we don't count the brother. Yeah, there is a brother. He real also ran energy in that family.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him. What did he?
Well, there's a lot more Brontes than I thought of.
And they were like all in the arts.
They just like whatever the random genes thing. It just went jackpot, jackpot, jackpot.
I don't know.
Whiff.
Yeah.
Jackpot,
Sorry,
jackpot,
with
jackpot.
Sorry, Branwell.
I mean, he wasn't a total whiff. It's just his sisters were straight up geniuses, and I think it's hard to compete.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So we got George Hayes, The Black Moth, 1921. We have obviously the big ones like Gone with the Wind, which is really more of a historical epic. I love that I could only find photos of Margaret Mitchell holding Gone with the Wind.
That's good marketing, fundamentally.
That's good
Also, she refused to have her photo
right?
taken without the cover of the book visible.
It
Good
does
for
look
her.
like she's about at the same part of the book in both places, so maybe it's just a tough read for her as well.
It looks heavy. It's a tough tome.
And then obviously we have work by like Rebecca, which is kind of early Gothic romance. I do not know how to pronounce this author's name.
Daphne
I'm not even
du
gonna take
Maurier?
a chance.
Works for me.
Yeah,
Perfect.
close enough.
Yeah.
You know, she
I like
also
it.
wrote The Birds.
What?
I
Whoa.
did not.
The
She wrote
movie
a
The
lot of
Birds?
stuff. The story upon which the movie is based. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
That means she wrote the source material for 2 of my favorite Hitchcock movies.
Well,
Yeah.
also, like,
She was
one
great.
of the first people to identify how terrifying birds are, and I appreciate that about her.
Birds are pretty scary, and I didn't
And
know.
Rebecca's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Rebecca's are terrifying.
Rebecca is
Man.
scary.
Yeah.
Got a shout out to
More of
the
a-
Rebeccas that I know, because we have a friend, Rebecca, from college, who, when I did the
Wonderful.
shout out, the call for all the romance best ones, Rebecca said Beloved Bondage was one that they read aloud freshman year. And the tagline is, she was a Roman senator's wife, he was her Britain slave. And it was just good group reading, I think, generally.
So there's a few things that kind of happen before we kind of get into romance novels as we see them. There's a few really important things. One, in 1908, Mills and Boons is a publisher in the UK. By the 1930s, they're almost exclusively doing very early version of romance novels, but they're only being published in the UK. That's all they have rights for.
Are Mills and
in
Boone a couple? Because they should be. I ship Mills and Boone.
Well, will they, won't they? That's what I say.
Yeah, that's the good tension. That's why the boardroom meetings were always so hot. So in 1949, in Winnipeg, Canada, probably the most important company, it's already been mentioned once on this show, in romance novels, Harley Quinn is established. Harley Quinn has a pretty interesting history. They don't start out as a romance publisher, but in 1957 they sort of see what Mills and Boons is doing, and they make an agreement to start publishing their books in the United States, in North America, right? They would eventually, it's kind of like ironic, they would eventually get so big that they would end up just buying Mills and Boone.
Oh,
so, like,
yeah.
Mills and Boone sort of gave them the key to buy them.
I love that. It's like when
by, like,
it's
giving
like
them their
7-Eleven in
content.
Japan.
Did 7-Eleven buy
7-Eleven
Japan
bought
recently?
Japan? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
There was
did you hear it? It's
There was a
getting
guy
crazy
who
out there.
he like did the franchises
What?
of 7-Eleven in Japan, and it was so successful in Japan that his franchise bought all of 7-Eleven. And it's all like 7-Eleven is a subsidiary of 7-Eleven Japan.
Those are much better 7-Elevens, so I feel no problem with that hierarchy.
No, he's very good at it. And they're like
deserve to
every
own all
9
of it.
feet. They're crazy.
I feel like we should cover this now. Romance covers are slightly exaggerated from what is usually in the books. I feel like you're going to see that theme a lot.
I like Island Hospital,
kinda-
where she's like a nurse, but she's running away from a bear. Or is startled by a bear.
I mean, we'd all be surprised,
Or is
right?
it a will they, won't they with the bear? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's a love triangle.
It's love triangle.
Yes, the
Love
first
triangle,
triangles are all bear-based.
Yeah. Harley Quinn, they start to take off publishing Mills and Boone's romance novels in the United States in 1957. They have a few very specific rules. One, all their books are 192 pages on the dot, not a single page more, not a single page less.
What?
That's the assignment. 192 pages. Make it happen.
I love that. I assume that has to do with like it's the most affordable
Binding?
binding printing size. because there is a thing I don't quite understand how bookbinding works, but I'm led to believe it's like in packets of 20 or 40 or something like that. Like it's not just like one extra page.
Maybe, I think it's packets of 20.
sure.
I think it's groups of 24 is what it is.
Groups of 24.
That's not how I think it'd work. I think how it'd work is you'd buy the spine, and then you buy pages individually, 10 cents a page, and then you got a book in there. You just kind of throw the pages in there one at a time.
Are you thinking of a
That's how I
binder?
did
What you're
it.
forgetting as
Yeah,
well.
so like a binder.
These are Mills and Boon's books.
Oh, right.
Being published by Harley Quinn, so you actually have to convert it to metric.
Oh, yeah.
And it still
sure,
ends up at 192.
Amazing.
Wow, weirdly.
But in
Metric
order to do
pages
that,
and
you have
everything.
to read some books in the math genre.
Benjamin Franklin wanted us to have metric pages. That's
And look
actually
what
true.
happened to him.
Yeah.
He died, and
Yeah,
they found all
syphilis.
those bodies under his house.
He supposedly died. Okay,
He died of syphilis? I thought he died of kite.
no. That
How do you
something-
think? What do you think was on the kite, Alex?
You can't
Come
get
on,
syphilis
wake up.
from a kite. Okay.
No, you give syphilis to the kite.
Yeah, when you fly a
It's sad
kite,
when that-
it's
Ew.
also you're flying
Yeah.
all the other kites that it's flown before.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a kite with syphilis? It's sad. Like the little tail falls off and the string is barely hanging there.
Oh.
It's losing its mind.
It's
It's
a
sitting in
very
the back,
strange riff.
fishing into its swimming pool. Let's get to the actual birth of the romance genre as we know it today. The thing that sort of would bring all of this together, add the last few missing pieces.
That would tame
and
the vixen,
create
as we
The
say.
genre. Yeah, exactly.
It's just the name of one of the book
so-
covers. If you're not watching along, that sounds like I was being weird.
Important to
Yeah, I
clarify.
mean,
No, that
It
actually
is
sounded
weird
like
that
a
I
very
found-
normal thing for you to say, Alex.
Stop.
Actually, it didn't
Yeah,
even
I was gonna
register
say,
with me
that's
at
not-
all.
that's
I was like,
not
that's how
like
Alex
me.
talks. I don't know.
It's not how I-
Alex, do you know how hard it was for me to find a book with that expression you use all the time as the title of it?
Are you getting royalties from this?
Yeah. In 1972, Kathleen E. Woody West. What do you guys think? Come some
Yeah, Woody
I don't
West.
wanna
I
be
think
long.
it sounds great.
Woody
I
West?
think that's great.
Woody
Yeah.
West? All right, awesome. So in 1972, she published The Flame and the Flower. So
Ooh.
this right here is the actual first, as we know it, romance novel. Right? This is the one that would everything following it would be directly would owe something to.
Favorite thing about this book cover
so-
is the way the L is penetrating the O in flower.
Oh my God, that is
yeah.
so subtle.
Ella's getting in on that
did
A
not-
also, I'd
yeah,
say.
yeah.
Dang.
I should say, yeah, so this is an early version of the cover because clearly it is mostly text. And they're like, well, let's just do a little
Yeah, there's a small
hotness
clinch
down
at the
yeah.
bottom, and then also that guy is currently being rammed by a schooner.
I mean, nudged, love tapped. I think he's enjoying this.
No,
It's
No,
on fire. I
he's
think.
clearly
I think
rammed
he's
by
getting
that
rammed.
schooner.
Fire is
Yeah.
exploding out of his back as the schooner hits him at
You
random
got it.
speed.
you got to check out the
Yeah.
YouTube. It's wild. This cover right here. He's getting rammed. Just
Yeah, he's
totally rammed.
The
This
schooner
book-
is to that man as L is to O in flower.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
What's
Y'all gotta
inside?
check this
I'm not-
out.
Why are we kink shaming this guy? All right?
I'm not kink
let
shaming
him-
shit. I
let
love
him
it.
get
Look, I'm never
pegged
going
by
to
the
king shame a
boat.
boat.
I'm
That's not
saying,
me.
come on in and check this out, everybody.
And actually, you guys, I'm going to tell you something about this guy in a little bit, and we're not going to be so happy we talk so much about him. So I'm going to say that
Oh, no,
immediately.
it's like Lovecraft.
Nah,
Don't Google
I
it.
bet it's cool.
Yeah. But, all right, so this book has a really interesting kind of history behind it. One, it was 600 pages when it came out,
Ooh.
which is
Whoa.
almost 3 of the conventional romance novels that were being published.
Yeah.
That's like as
So
long as the
what-
Bible.
I mean, it's literally what 3 romance novels and
Yeah.
24 extra pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're 192 apiece.
Well, and
so
what is 600 pages, Anthony? It's 25 packets of 24. It's still a 24th.
yeah.
Is that-
Yeah, I calculated it first as.
Okay, great. I was
didn't wanna
really nervous. I was
pretend
like,
I was
can you do that on the
math
fly? We okay? Go.
So this book kind of accidentally stumbled onto one of the biggest things, important things that romance novels needed to really take off, and it purposely did 2 of the other ones. So because it was so girthy, if you want to say that word
No,
for
I don't.
this, because it was so girthy,
It's that thick
no
600.
publisher wanted to publish it, right? They were like, "You're insane. It's literally way too big." So what she did was she found a paperback publisher named Avon to publish it. And so it was originally published in paperback, which would be, if you like sort of remember growing up, almost all romance novels you would see at the grocery store were paperback, right? That became a huge staple of the genre. It cut down on price. It made them very easy to be carried at like grocery stores, which is where most romance novels have been sold out of. So that, on pure accident, was a huge windfall for just this entire genre as a medium. The other thing was it was incredibly sexually explicit compared to almost everything that came before. And it really focused on, like, you know, the sort of the details on sex. Some of the stuff is pretty gross. I'll get to that in just a second. But it also did kind of focus on sort of women's sexuality in a way that wasn't really done. And the final thing it did, you'll kind of see it down here, but this is a very small, tame part of probably the most iconic thing about romance novels, which is something called the clutch cover.
Yeah.
So this down here, this little thing would end up growing into eventually just being
It's weird that they didn't go with the
entire
boat.
cover.
It's weird that of this cover, they were like,
That was
we
the thing
should
that took off.
have all the clutches and not, he's always getting rammed by a boat.
Just rammed by this boat. I mean, it's unbelievable. Just getting rammed by it.
With those sort of last three elements combined, this book took off in a huge way. It became a massive success.
I
This
read
book
ahead.
is in
Whoops.
fairly problematic.
Yeah.
Early
sucks. Can we-
romance novels, yeah. Early romance novels had a lot of sexual assault in them. That was a very foundational thing for the early genre.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was because of like sort of ironic prudity laws about having sex outside of marriage, that the only way they could scoot around that was by having it be an assault. Was how you used to justify your heroine having sex before marriage in a novel.
Just going to put it out there, I'm
which-
against this.
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
Yeah, it's not good.
Thank
Thankfully,
God.
there's other options out there now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Thankfully, we caught up on that.
So you're saying I don't have to read this book?
No, it's not the
No,
only book.
I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah.
For the books.
Yeah.
Oh,
great.
okay. See,
Love it.
I hadn't heard about it, and I was waiting.
If you know a librarian, then maybe they can tell you about it.
Yeah. Have your mom
I was so
suggest. Tell
nervous.
your mom that you want a lot of hot sex, but nothing assaulty.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
And then just
my
have her
mom
pick
knows
out
what
a
I
book.
like with this stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that he didn't, like, if he got, like, assaulted by the ship, that'd be, you know,
It'd be one thing.
one thing, I guess.
he got
But, yeah,
rammed.
Rammed.
this book, even regardless of sort of its weird things, but due to the sort of explicit nature of it being sold in paperback, it becomes huge. By 1976, it has sold more than 2.3 million copies in the first 4 years, which is huge for it, right? And at that point, kind of what I have here is that you had all the rules and all the details of the romance genre fully established by the time this book reaches out, right? And when you understand that what you're looking for, the tropes and the genre staples are not a bug, they're a feature.
Yeah.
Right? And that is sort of the thing that they like about it. It's like what I was sort of saying with The Thing earlier. It is like when you're reading one of these novels, when your heroine meets the hero, you know that they are in love, but they do not know they're in love yet, right? And you get a certain satisfaction that comes from
Yeah,
that
that's
experience.
my
Like,
favorite
that
thing
is
the whole time, being like, you idiots, you don't even know you're in love yet, you dum-dums.
I do that
smart.
with people
Snooky.
on the street. I'll be like, y'all are in love. I'll just walk up to them. I'll be on the train. I'll just look over at two strangers sitting next to
Yeah.
each other and be like, you're in love.
You're in
And they're
love.
like, oh my God. Oh my God, I didn't realize.
Yep. I've created
This
a
is
lot of
good way to
relationships
either make
out there.
people's lives or ruin them. I like that.
Oh, everybody loves it. Nobody
We call
hates
it-
it.
You've never accidentally said that to siblings?
I have, but they're like, we do love each other. You know?
Yeah, it's a different love.
ironically,
It's
that
different
always
love. It's
ends up-
fine.
Yeah.
I like this idea a lot, that once you understand the tropes of the genre, the structure of a genre, that actually allows you to pay attention to other things within it instead of wondering where you are in a plot, for example, because you know instinctively where you are. And so that can kind of like it can give you like a scaffolding that's very, very clear so that you can play around more inside it.
It's like a herald for my comedy nerds out there. There's one structure, and the skill comes in the infinite variations within it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to get your happily ever after, right? Yeah. That is the other major staple of this genre. The idea of the HEA, right? There's an acronym for it.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, like there are romance novels who certainly subvert that, but it is so incredibly rare. No matter what, you are going to get that HEA.
Yeah.
But yeah, the genre has become very diverse. It's more popular than ever. There's a huge convention every year in Texas, along with a bunch of other ones every year that have been going since 1981. The genre has bled into everything from YA, adventure, superhero, etc. And that's kind of the history of romance novels as we know it. But I do want to take a moment and talk about kind of one of the things I said earlier. One of the most important things about it, one of my favorite things about it doing the research, is these goddamn clutch covers.
Yeah.
So clutch covers became a huge part of this genre from the 70s through the early 2000s. They are called a clutch because the term comes from professional boxing. If you've ever watched a boxing match and you've seen that point when the boxers do the only reasonable thing you should do in a boxing
aggressive
match,
hugging,
which is just hug it out. Yeah. Just stop getting hit in the face.
Yeah, and then the ref always comes over and is like, no, you hate each other. Stop it.
Yeah, I always wish it would end with them being like, we've become friends.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the plot of like Rocky 2 when you think about it.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what a clutch cover is.
Yeah.
Clutch covers are incredibly iconic for this entire medium, as you can sort of see.
Just from glancing at this, Tender in the Storm, too spicy for me.
Really? Yeah, which ones do you think you could handle?
That one's a little much for me. We see his entire...
Which one works for your chaste sensibilities,
Well,
Alex?
I like the Sea King, because I do think that's where all true romance starts, is in the sea.
I would also fuck Poseidon.
Exactly. That's the one I'm most interested in.
Yeah, that one's good.
The Tender in the Storm is pretty wild in that, like, the dude is generally just using his partner as a underwear. That's the best way I can describe it.
No.
I agree. He is wearing her as a bathing suit is a good way to describe that photo.
But not sustainable and definitely hard on the back if you're going to go around it in this.
Just of these, the one that I'm most into, Gentle Rogue, because he's correctly on the sea.
Yeah, Gentle Rogue looks pretty good.
It looks pretty gentle.
Alex, there's so many romance novels for you out there if you're into the pirate theme.
Look, I just want to fuck a boat. Is that an option?
A boat? I'm sure, but I'm not as familiar
Why pick
with
one
that.
boat when you can have all of them?
I just would like to be rammed.
Yeah.
I'm going to search Alex. Let me do some Googling. I'll get back to you, Alex.
Can we get that clipped, please?
I understand why the covers keep evolving, and I think whatever someone is into with these books, I think it's totally fine. My personal favorites are the really, like, from an art perspective, are the classic clinch covers with like watercolor paintings and that were painted from models. But I like the current trend of very clean graphic design, too, if we're talking about the stuff that you feel okay pulling out on an airplane, perhaps, which I think is why they are that way.
Yeah, so this is what modern romance novels look like. They just look like kind of graphic novel design, kind of get Trojan horsed in to, like, this is sort of like an active movement to get them out of the romance novel section and into other parts of the bookstore.
I think that's like, this is my little soapbox. It's like, I don't think that should even be like a bad thing, right? That something is a romance novel. I don't think it should be something that we're embarrassed by. I know I just said that thing that's like, perhaps you feel more comfortable pulling this out in an airplane. I think this is kind of what you hinted at earlier, Anthony, that's like the girl things, the things that we have decided are not as worthy or are embarrassing somehow because they were marketed towards women initially. I don't think that romance should be like a genre that anyone is ashamed of, no matter what the covers look like.
Anthony, thank you so much for an excellent presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That was amazing. so great. I loved that, and I learned a ton.
Today's episode is brought to you by Unwrap My Heart, an original romance novel by upstart writers Alex Falcone and Ezra Fox. We haven't talked about it on the show.
Best-selling.
A best-selling book. Literally a best-selling book, which everybody who I've talked to who've seen that thinks it's a joke, and it is not. I'm surprised. It's weird.
It's just easy to claim it, though, really, in some ways. There's a lot of ways to best sell something. I guess I'll just say that.
Well, for sure. Yeah, this is like, it's not a Michelin star, but it's like Michelin acknowledged or whatever.
Yeah.
There's some creep in bestsellers, but we were on the bestseller list on Amazon for a weekend is what we were for this.
I would love to see you like be forced to try to write like the smuttiest thing. You're a very clean guy to me. Like you don't.
So Ezra and I had this great idea because Twilight is what caused 50 Shades of Grey to happen. 50 Shades was a fanfic of Twilight that then they rewrote without the vampires so they could sell it. And then no one told me that when I was reading it. So like 3/4 of the way through, I was like, man, they're really sitting on these vampires till late in the book. Anyway. But so they made it was an erotic fan fiction that became its own series. And so we thought it would be funny after we reached success with Unwrap My Heart if we wrote our own erotic fan fiction of our book and made it a spinoff. It was going to be called Hardcore Bandage. And it was going to be a BDSM mummy novel. And then we started and didn't like the feeling.
If you don't like writing this on your own, imagine writing with your friend.
Yeah.
It's just not what you want.
We're just two dudes writing some sex scenes for a mummy. It's pretty gross.
What's the issue? I don't understand. How could you not do it?
You find out what you're into, and then you find out very quickly it wasn't that. I will say the best thing about this book for me, though, possibly is Sarah's reading of the audiobook. Because Sarah, you did an amazing job on this. Absolutely.
And Thank you. One of my favorite things I've ever done.
Just an incredible job, and very even in our weird resurgence last year, everyone also talked about how great the audiobook was. So very, very good. And it may seem to you, Sarah, like we talk about this on the show all the time, but it's only because you're here. I thought we would bring it back up and let you know. So unwrapmyheart.com, and you can it will point you on those directions. You can also find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and on Audible, where you can hear Sarah's excellent
Alex,
reading.
I just wanted to make a quick correction to something you said at the beginning of that kind of ad break. You know, in 50 Shades of Grey, the vampires are capitalism.
Oh, I forgot about that.
It's again the subtext.
That's a good point.
You're not looking at the subtext. I'm looking at the text beneath the text.
Yeah, that's such
it's like that song, Anthony, right? The economic structure is a vampire. Right?
You know what, though? Here's the thing about me. It turns out occasionally big fan of capitalism, like right now, where you go to unwrapmyheart.com and you purchase our book. Okay, let's get on to the show. So we're doing this a little bit different. Instead of doing pros and cons of this, I just want to do pros, basically. And I want to mostly focus on Sarah here because we've given this large factual presentation, and now I want to talk more about what this means to you and how we can access it. So one of those books that Anthony mentioned in the cool new modern covers is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. And this was your recommendation to me a couple weeks ago of a book that I should read that is a special, like a shining a light in the genre. Tell me why this book, what you like about it, and how you end, like what subgenres in romance that you find especially delightful.
Oh, well, Emily Henry, first of all, is like kind of at the forefront of like contemporary romance right now.
It does seem like she's everywhere. I feel like when Ezra asked for recommendations, it came up. Hannah, our official librarian, Hunter's mom, Hannah emailed us and was like, you should read something by Emily Henry. Like, it's all over the place. Yeah,
she's super popular. Really interesting person, too. New York Magazine just did a profile of her because her next book's coming out next week. She's an interesting person as well. But yeah, I really loved People We Meet on Vacation because it has a cool structure. It goes over 12 years, and these two characters' lives, they go on an annual. Yeah, they go on an annual vacation. It's a travel writer and her college best friend.
Yeah.
But you talk about getting into feelings. It is a really interesting exploration of like a very deep friendship, and it's a friendship that you believe would become like a really great romance, and you really, really do want them to get together. It is also, a lot of romance novels will alternate points of view. Emily Henry's books stick to the female protagonist's point of view. At least they have so far. I don't know if her latest one is going to do something different. And I really like that because you get to know her characters really, really well. I think her characters are super believable people, while being heightened in the ways that make it like a fun kind of escapist read. But they never feel like they feel like real. They feel like people you could hang out with. And the characters in this book are so sweet and lovable, and they love each other very much, even before they realize it's in a romantic way. The way they care
even though
for each
I
other
figured
is
that
great.
out before they did. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
I felt
You're
really
very
smug
smart
about it.
You're very smart.
I'm about halfway through this one, and I've been actually really liking it. I think I will finish it even past today. And I think just the meet cute was one of the fun things. Like, when you have the genre expectations, you're like, okay, how are they going to do this, and how are you going to find a new twist on the meet cute? And it's a really fun meet cute in that like there's like a really good fake out in this meet cute basically that I found totally delightful.
My favorite thing about people we meet on vacation is that they both go to therapy. And that is something that Ezra and I did in Unwrap My Heart on purpose. We were like, a lot of the times in these books, the characters could use therapy, and we should just briefly mention that she's getting therapy. And Emily Henry apparently believes the same, that like just a brief ad that like, if you are feeling like these people are, you should talk to somebody.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying you guys went to couples therapy while writing.
Oh, that'd be such a good idea.
If we work on our sex book together, we should.
I'm just not feeling this for the sex book, Alex. Let's go to co-creator sex book therapy.
Aw.
I just feel like the sex isn't good anymore. Like in real life. No, in the book. I just feel like he's not
Started the
picking
book, it was
passion in.
electric. It was, we couldn't stop.
I would say the sex in this, the spiciness of this is low but not non-existent. They have a nice conversation about using protection, and then they do, but it's mostly just like some husky voices and a couple of mouths exploring, and then we move on.
Yeah, this is sort of like the like fade to black type of handling of sexuality. And there's books like that too, depending on what your spice level is. I actually wrote a list of some of my favorite recent romance novels that I am happy to share with listeners if you want. Boyfriend's Material by Alexis Hall, who friend of the podcast, Tanya, I think initially recommended this one to me.
Oh, nice.
That is a very fun romance novel focusing on a relationship between two men. And one of them is a mess and one of them is straight-laced. Always a fun trope to play with.
Oh, yeah.
A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole, who, Anthony, I saw you highlighted on the presentation. Everything she writes is wonderful. A Princess in Theory has a really fun premise. This young woman finds out that she has, like, been betrothed to this prince of this African country since, like, she was born, and she had no idea she's actually, like, a princess. Obviously, People You Meet on Vacation, anything by Emily Henry is wonderful. A new one that just came out very recently, Honey and Spice, by Bolu Babalola. This is an awesome contemporary romance set at a liberal arts college in the UK. It has like fake dating, which is one of my favorite tropes in romance novels. And the characters just have a lot of really great, like, long hangout conversations in it. So you really feel like you're becoming friends with them too. And this one,
Sarah, that was a rec that I got from a friend Emily from Whitman. Also, that was another one of her callouts.
It's so wonderful, and the author is also a fantastic Twitter follow. She is a romance expert and always has fun insights about the genre. And then there's Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. That one just came out. It is about a female writer for a show that is, for all intents and purposes, SNL. Who strikes up a flirtation with the musical guest and host for the week. But she talks about how schlubby male comedy writers are always dating above their station with like hot, successful, famous women. She feels like it's
so true.
Yeah.
I mean,
and she wishes
it just never ends.
I know.
You know?
Seriously.
So hard. But she thinks that it's not possible for the reverse to be true. And then the premise of the book is, can perhaps the reverse be true? So
it's like a sexy version of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
Yeah, except I liked it.
Those are awesome recommendations. So one thing you mentioned when we were talking about these, about which one to go, and you settled on People We Meet on Vacation, you mentioned that you like Friends to Lovers as a subgenre. What are some other like tropes or subgenres that you find particularly enjoyable?
I like fake dating. I think is always fun. I love a kind of slow burn in a romance. I think the longing, the like pining for each other, as you said earlier, I find
there's
really
a lot of
sweet
pining
and
in this
really
book.
fun. Yeah, and I really like that because I think like you said, they're going to end up together. There's not really like a mystery there. So I think like drawing out that like anticipation is part of the fun of that, and getting into like that longing, that want, that desire for someone else, and the focus on like what this character really loves about this other character is what kind of like I find very swoon-inducing in romance. And I think probably all of them I recommended have that in common. I think there's an element of that sort of slow burn. And again, going back to Jane Austen, one of my friends described Pride and Prejudice as like the ultimate slow burn, because she's like, there's whole chapters where Elizabeth is like off in someone's house in another part of the country for like months. Like there's like almost a year where she doesn't see Darcy, and it's so great. You're just like waiting for them to get back together again, like little magnets being drawn back towards each other.
Aw.
And I don't. If it's too personal, you don't have to ask. I just am curious if anyone on the panel here. Have you guys ever actually read something that makes you do that movie cliche when you have to fan yourself down while reading it?
I mean,
You're reading a scene and you actually like, whoo.
I remember when I was listening to 50 Shades of Grey on audiobook walking through San Francisco, I would like my eyes would dart like around like nervously to think that someone maybe would like hear me through the earbuds. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, I've never swooned, but I have had that. I definitely am frequently embarrassed by stuff.
This is like the checking the door kind of moment, even when I was outside in public.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a function of these books. It's not always necessarily the entire point, but like titillation is part of these books, and I think that's like a personal journey. I have had those moments for sure where I'm like, oh my God, like reading these novels. And I think that can be fun too. And
absolutely.
It depends on how flowery the language is, if it's more of a fade to black type scenario, or if they really want to describe everything in like great detail.
There are so many things that I feel like where they say it and I'm like, I have I've read this in other sex scenes. I've never heard a person do anything close to this. There's like, this is like...
That sounds like a you problem, Alex.
Yeah, Alex,
like,
whoa.
Bad at sex, Alex. They're always doing other things than just like laying down in missionary and just sort of looking at each other and nothing else. It's weird. I don't like it.
The closest I've ever come to like fanning myself is years ago on our old podcast, Read It and Weep, we did an episode with Sarah Wendell, who's a famous romance novel writer and writer about romance novels, and she had us read something from the Harlequin Blaze series. She had us read a book called Private Sessions, which involved some very abrupt and deviant sexual things on a piano that I was just not prepared for.
Whoa.
I was just not ready to, and it was very upsetting. And,
awesome.
They were playing chopsticks together.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, not unlike that. Yeah, not entirely not that. So I've read a lot of mysteries, and I think I love mysteries, and but also I'm deeply embarrassed by a lot of them. And not like, oh, I'm just ashamed that these aren't good, but more like all of the mysteries from the 1920s, deeply racist, or mysteries that are otherwise good, but portray the cops as being super competent, which is implausible. So there are things you have to sort of like overlook to get into the genre. And so, I do you feel that way at all? Like, what degree are you like overlooking things when you're in this world?
In the romance world, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think the good thing, I mean, as we covered, the origins of a lot of this stuff is really not great, really awful, and I think the publishing world still has a huge ways to go in terms of actually representing the world and the readership out there. I do think some improvements have been made, but there's still a long way to go. I think what I try to do as a reader is just seek out stuff that's not all the same point of view all the time. There's a lot of bad shit out there in the past, and there's a lot of like people who have not always done a good job, and you look for the people who are trying to do better, I guess. And fortunately, there's a lot of them out there.
I feel like in doing this show, this is something that we kind of like keep encountering, and I keep having this thought when we're like having discussions like this, where I'll be like, it'd be really cool if like aliens existed and we met them, because if we meet aliens, I wonder if we could ask them, like, do y'all have, like, racism? And if they're like, we don't know what that is, we could be like, can we have, like, your culture and stuff? Like,
Can we just swap?
We could really use that. Like, can we, like, borrow, like, all of your shit? If they're like, yeah, I guess. What?
Well, I feel like one thing that Anthony, I love that. One thing Anthony said on the wrestling episode was we're not going to use wrestling against wrestling. We don't get to.
Fair.
And basically, in just for without any discussion, we didn't agree on this in a meeting. Anthony just decided in our discussion of wrestling, we can't talk about the bad parts of wrestling, and it made it for a very fun episode. But then when we did comedy last week, we almost exclusively used comedy against comedy. Yeah. We almost exclusively talked about the bad parts of comedy. I want you guys in your heads right now to hold the best version of this in your mind when we rank this on the master list. Hunter, you have taken over since Ezra was gone, and he
did a great job.
He's abdicated and you did such a good job. Please read for us the current master list for people listening at home.
Look at how polite and nice I'm going to be, Alex. Number 1, warm beverages. Number 2, My Neighbor Turtle. Number 3, pro wrestling. Number 4, trees. Number 5, fresh bread. Number 6, stand-up comedy. Number 7, cat videos. And the 8th one, which was something like Halo and Boys or something. Stinkiness.
All right. So where on this list are we going to put romance novels? There's a lot of good stuff on this list.
Let's just do number 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say
let's just do number 1 and
Let's
go
crazy. I think I say we believe in love. We believe in magic. We believe in the power of good storytelling.
Yeah. Do you believe in magic? And then
we
put it
believe
number
in
1.
feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I'll say this: my problem with romance novels is they get together in the end. I don't like that. I think they should not. And
I bet we can find you one where they don't.
I'm sure Sarah can recommend 3 right now. You don't have to.
Yeah, actually, you got any where they don't get together in the end? Because that's like my favorite stuff.
Yeah, man, read the Notebook.
No, I don't want
That's
to
called
read
a
the Notebook.
tragedy. That's a different genre.
Oh, dude,
you're asking for a different genre.
Shit. You know what?
No,
You're gonna love Romeo and Juliet.
Well,
Yeah,
they do
okay.
get together. It just doesn't last.
Oh yeah, in the everlasting kingdom of heaven. That's right. Good point.
Yeah, that's true.
This is a real stumper for me. One thing is I've lost some of my enthusiasm for the generic topics, and I'm enjoying the specific topics. Number 2, I feel like
that's
stand-up
weird.
comedy is so much better than pro wrestling, and I'm just so confused by looking at this list.
It's just all over the place. The thing why I'm fine making a case for number 1. I think the thing that I love about this is that I want people to take away from this saying like, hey, if there's a genre that I don't think it's for me, that doesn't mean I get to dismiss it, and I still get to engage with it because it's probably broad enough. And there's enough interesting things happening in it that like there's probably something for me, or at the very least, I could figure out what are the parts that people get, as opposed to just like crapping on it, which is I feel like where I was at in my 20s. And so I think to show the kind of that maybe more hopeful open arc, I'd bump it up from that.
So you would put it number 1 just as an apology for how you were a dick when you were 20?
We did a lot of podcasts that were really doing.
I agree with you.
You know what? I want to make the argument that the only thing funnier than pro wrestling being better than trees is pro wrestling and then romance novels being better than trees.
Than trees?
So
so here's what I like about putting it above trees is that they're printed on trees. So it's like trees.
They do own
good, and then we were like, this is your final form.
I mean, I would say just basically, I'd say right above pro wrestling makes sense because it's like this is genre, right? Storytelling that I think is maybe a bit broader and it has a longer tradition that we could like work with, and then also it owns trees for sure. Like take that trees.
And I would argue that there's plenty of romance in pro wrestling.
Yes, I would too.
Indeed.
And the Stone Cold Stunners. There's the Stone Cold Stunners and romance novels.
Oh, if that's your genre, I could find that, man. You don't know.
Oh my God, I would read a romance novel about The Rock.
Has there ever
That's
been?
what I want.
There's definitely some. Yeah.
I also feel like, though, I would put it above pro wrestling because pro wrestling doesn't have enough boats.
1, it has a lot of boats. And 2, pro wrestling somehow has a less problematic past than romance novels as well.
I don't know.
So
you refuse to get into it, so it's hard for me to tell.
Yeah, we'll never know. There's no other way you
Hunter,
can find
where
out.
are you leaning?
Right?
I'm getting some vibes from other people.
I don't know. I gotta be honest. I can't. When I look at the list, it's hard to pick. It's easier if I don't look at the list. If I don't look at the list, then I can kind of like sort of decide. But when I look at it, it's like How did we even put stand-up comedy at number 6? Like, I don't really understand what happened. Where was I on that? I don't even remember.
What happened was
Fugue state.
Pallavi and I both said that it should be number 2, and you and Anthony said it should be number 9, and we settled around 6.
Oh, wow. That's funny that
You were the
that.
one who sandbagged it. But I agree.
Really?
The list makes no sense to me whatsoever, and it makes it very difficult for me. I actually feel like it's easier for me to put this anywhere because none of the list makes sense.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you. The more we do this, and the more I look at this, I think this list is like exactly how I feel about this. Warm beverages is a little bit high.
Your bullshit is so much higher than my bullshit. Of course you think that. Your two weird
I don't know,
things
Alex.
are in the top
You
3.
currently have number 1. I feel like warm beverages is Alex's hat.
Yeah,
so I
true.
mean, like, you can't really complain that much. Like, it's
Well,
like warm
I al-
beverages would be much lower for me on my personal ranking of this.
Yeah.
I
But
also
2
have
and
my
3 would
thumb
both.
on
I
the
mean, like
scale.
Totoro and pro wrestling would both be at the bottom for me.
Wait, guys, all right, I don't know if this will work, but what if we try to put it with spiciness? So, like, if romance novels is spicier than thing, it gets to go
Yes.
above it. So, is it spicier than trees?
Yeah.
Or okay,
Oh, yeah.
Definitely
for sure.
spicier than.
is it spicier than pro wrestling?
That's
Absolutely.
tough.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, I think
Yeah,
so because
I
some
think-
romance novels describe penetration, and that's not
Yeah,
normally in wrestling.
No.
Oh my!
Maybe not the wrestling.
You don't know about all the leagues, Sarah.
Obviously, there's
I
a
got
kind of wrestling that makes you fan yourself,
I got-
Anthony.
I got some links I can send you.
Sarah, you also have more history with pro wrestling than I do. Do you put this at 3 or 4?
I was going to put it at 3 without even looking at the list, never having looked at the list, having it go totally over my
There you
head
go.
every time you said it because I'm
All right.
tired. So I'd say 3.
I think that's a great answer then. I think romance
3.
novels at 3.
So number 1, warm beverages, whatever. Number 2, My Neighbor Totoro. Number 3, romance novels. Number 4, pro wrestling. Number 5, trees. Number 6, bread or whatever. Stand-up comedy. Number 7. Number 8, cat videos, and number 9, Halo or whatever.
You did a better job
I do
last
such a
week,
good
but that's
job.
good enough. Okay, let's do our final things and get out of here. All right, 2 quick orders of business. Number 1, an email from Carlos, who I think was trying to get me to buy something. Carlos has some sort of a podcasting company, but he let us know that the best thing ever is ranking very well in the Netherlands.
Hell yeah.
Also, just a heads up, we are currently positioned 82 in comedy in the Netherlands, 84 in comedy in the Republic of Korea, and number 101 in comedy in Hong Kong.
I'm going to say this. I am the sole reason that we're number 82 in the Netherlands.
You are?
And if you knew about my fandom, you'd know why.
It's not my family. I have 92 cousins in the Netherlands.
You don't have 92 cousins in the
They're
Netherlands.
second
and
cousins, but yes.
Yeah. Oh, and they all listened? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm sure none of them have listened, but one of them saw me do comedy when I was there last summer, and she came up afterwards. She's like, I'm a teacher. I understand a lot of my students have ADHD, which is how they
sounds
pronounce
really nice.
ADHD in Dutch.
That's very
she
funny.
just made that assumption from watching me perform.
ADHD. I love that.
ADHD.
That sounds so much more pleasant.
It does sound nice. And then next week, I want to let you guys know we're going to be talking about. There's a big one next week. We're talking about Waffle House.
Yeah.
This is a very special episode. This is going to be a
Waffle
hunter-led
House.
episode.
It's a good house.
We're talking about the Waffle House, the business, but you will notice our icon is a house made out of waffles, and I'm very proud of it.
Ooh.
Look at this little Waffle House. This is really
That's
nice.
so
I'm
cute.
just going to say there's a lot of romance to be found at a Waffle House. So I think this is all one super
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a very good
A lot
point.
of pro.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Lot
A
of pro
culmination.
wrestling,
Maybe a
too.
tree
Lot of
somewhere.
There's a lot of amateur wrestling.
Really,
for
the
sure.
whole list. Warm beverages, everything on the list can be found in the Waffle House.
It's going to be a hunter-led episode. It's going to be a little bit different, and I'm very excited about it. So that's next week, Waffle House. All right, let's wrap it up. That is the show. That's the best thing ever. We will be back again next week talking about the Waffle House. Our theme music is by @Matrix. On Instagram, our logo design is by Tom Typography. You can get in touch with us. You can send us feedback on Instagram and Twitter @BTE Pod, on YouTube @AlexFalcone, and you can email us mail@bestthingeverpodcast.com. And we would really appreciate it if you'd leave us an honest 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Just tell us how you honestly think we are a five-star show. That's all I need from you. Very simple. Our producers. The show is made possible by the Duke of Jill, the best assistant regional manager Sean, and Claire, title TBD. Those are members of our Patreon. You can become a Patreon, patreon.com/BTEpod. If you join now, We have a lot of great additional benefits that you can get. Some merch, even. You can get some merch. It's really delightful. Best thing ever at BTE Pod on Patreon. My name is Alex Falcone. You can find me at Alex_Falcone on TikTok until the government takes it away from me. Ezra Fox is at deletethisnewsletter.substack.com. Thanks for being here, Ez.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a shout out to all my Facebook friends and family who gave me a whole bunch of tips. So thanks you to all of those and I'm gonna have like a Goodreads list for all those recommendations if people want to check it out, maybe in the show notes.
Excellent. And Anthony Lopez, thanks for joining us. Thanks for doing all that great research.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I'm happy. I was happy about it.
Yeah, good job, buddy.
And Hunter Donaldson, you can listen to Old Gamer's Almanac if you want to hear him discuss a different list of things.
Yeah, hey, thanks, yeah.
And Sarah Hatheway, at Sarah Hatheway on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. We really appreciate you talking to us about your love of romance novels.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for going on an exploration of the heart with me this evening. It was really lovely.
It's been lovely,
Yeah,
and I will treasure it forever.
Can't wait, Sarah, until we get to have you come back and pump your upcoming romance book.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes. I mentioned that you had written a romance novel in presenting the show before we got here, and I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, watch this space.
I think
Absolutely
we should end the show
happening.
It'll be excellent. All right, we'll talk to everybody next week. Thank you so much for listening. And I lost my button. I moved it. Now I can't find it. There it is. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.